There's a reason this video found you today, and it's not because you have it all figured out. It's because you don't. And somewhere in the last few weeks, months, maybe years, you've been looking around at everyone else and thinking, what's wrong with me? Why does everyone else seem to have their life together while I'm still figuring out the basics? Why am I 30 and still don't know what I'm doing? Why am I 41 and feel like I should be further along by now? And here's what I need you to understand. This video must find you at this exact moment because you're carrying a burden that was never yours to carry. The burden of believing you should have arrived by now. That by this age, by this point in your life, everything should be settled, figured out, so locked in. But that's not how life works. That's not how wisdom works. And that's definitely not how becoming who you're meant to be works. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're not the only one who doesn't have it together. You're just finally awake enough to see that the timeline you've been measuring yourself against was a lie from the beginning. Let me ask you something. At what age are you supposed to have it all figured out? 30? 40? 50? Because I'll tell you what happens at every one of those ages. You reach 30 and think, okay, now I should be established. Then you hit 40 and realize you're still learning. Then 50 comes and you're still adjusting, still growing, still discovering parts of yourself you didn't know existed. So when does it end? When do you finally arrive at the place where you have permission to stop being so hard on yourself? And the answer is never. Because that place doesn't exist. There is no finish line where you suddenly have everything figured out and can coast for the rest of your life. Life doesn't work that way. And the people who look like they have it together, they're either lying or they've just gotten better at accepting that they don't. That's the only difference. They stopped waiting to have it all figured out and started living anyway. Messy, uncertain, imperfect, but alive. Now here's what nobody tells you about the pressure you're under. Most of it is self-imposed. Most of the deadlines crushing you. Most of the expectations weighing you down. Most of the timelines telling you you're behind. They didn't come from the universe. They came from you. From the identity you built when you were younger about who you thought you'd be by now. From the movies and TV shows that convinced you life follows a neat 3-act structure where, by the end, everything's resolved. From comparing your chaotic behind the scenes to everyone else's carefully curated highlight reel. And you've been walking around carrying this image of where you should be, what you should have accomplished, who you should have become by this point. And every day that you don't match that image, you beat yourself up. You tell yourself you're failing. You wonder what's wrong with you. But here's the truth. That image, that perfect version of your life you thought you'd be living by now, it was never real. It was always a fantasy, a story, a projection. And you've been torturing yourself for not living up to something that was never possible in the first place. Let me tell you about rivers. Not the ones you see in postcards, calm and pretty and perfectly reflecting the sky. I'm talking about real rivers. The ones that carve canyons and shape landscapes and have been flowing for thousands of years. If you stand on the bank of a river and watch the surface, what do you see? Chaos. The water moving fast, churning, splashing, completely unpredictable. It looks like it doesn't know where it's going, like it's just crashing into rocks and spinning in eddies and making a mess. But here's what you're not seeing. Underneath that chaotic surface, deep below where you can see, there's a current. Steady, powerful, moving in one direction with a force that can move boulders. That deep current doesn't care about the surface chaos. It doesn't stop flowing because the water above it is turbulent. It just keeps moving. Slow, consistent, unstoppable. And over time, that steady current shapes everything. It carves valleys, it creates paths, it transforms the landscape, not quickly, not dramatically, but inevitably. That's you. The surface of your life, the part everyone sees, it might look chaotic right now. You might be bouncing between jobs, struggling with the relationships, questioning every decision, wondering if you'll ever figure it out. And that's okay, because underneath all that surface chaos, there's a current, a deep, steady force that's been shaping you this entire time. Every failure taught you something. Every wrong turn eliminated a path that wasn't meant for you. Every moment you thought you were lost, you were actually being directed. And that current, that force underneath everything, it's still moving, still shaping, still carving out the person you're becoming. You just can't see it yet because you're too focused on the chaos at the surface. Too busy comparing your turbulent water to someone else's calm stream. But their stream is shallow. Yours runs deep. And deep rivers, the ones with power, the ones that last, they always look chaotic on the surface. That's how you know they're strong enough to move mountains. Now let's talk about what you think you're supposed to be by now. You're in your late 30s, your 40s, maybe your 50s. And you thought by now you'd have the career, the relationship, the stability, the wisdom, the confidence. You thought you'd feel like an adult, like you knew what you were doing, like life made sense. But instead, you feel like you're still figuring it out, still making mistakes, still learning lessons you think you should have learned a decade ago. And you're ashamed of that. You think it means something's wrong with you. But here's what that actually means. It means you're still growing. It means you're still open. It means you haven't closed yourself off and decided this is as good as it gets. Because that's what having it all together actually looks like. It's not wisdom. It's resignation. It's deciding to stop growing because growth is uncomfortable. But you're still uncomfortable. You're still questioning. You're still becoming. And that's not failure. That's aliveness. Here's what I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. The person you thought you'd be by now, they don't exist. And they never did. That vision you had when you were 25 about who you'd be at 40, that person was imagined by someone who hadn't lived yet, who didn't know what life would actually throw at you, who didn't understand that becoming yourself isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You keep coming back to the same lessons, the same challenges, the same questions, but each time you're at a different level. Each time you understand a little more. And what looks like failure, what feels like going in circles, it's actually depth. You're not stuck, you're deepening. And depth takes time. There's no rushing it. There's no shortcut. You can't microwave wisdom. You can't fast forward experience. You just have to live and trust that every single moment, even the ones that feel wasted, even the ones that feel like setbacks, they're all part of the current, all part of the shaping, all part of becoming who you actually are instead of who you thought you should be. So let me ask you this. What if you stopped? What if you just stopped being so hard on yourself? What if you looked at where you are right now with all its mess and uncertainty and imperfection and said, This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not because it's perfect, not because you've arrived, but because this is where you are. And where you are is always the only place you can grow from. You can't grow from where you wish you were. You can't build from some imaginary version of your life. You can only work with what's here, what's real, what's now. And when you stop wasting energy being ashamed of where you are and start using that energy to actually move from where you are, everything shifts. Not because your circumstances magically change, but because you stop fighting reality. You stop arguing with what is, and you start working with it instead of against it. And here's what happens when you do that. When you finally give yourself permission to be exactly where you are, without shame, without comparison, without the crushing weight of should-haves and supposed-tos, you start to see that you're not actually behind. You're exactly on time for your life, not someone else's life. Yours, your timeline, your lessons, your path. And maybe your path took longer. Maybe you had to learn things the hard way. Maybe you had to go through things that other people didn't. But those things shaped you. They gave you depth. They made you who you are. And who you are right now, in this moment, is someone who's been through enough to finally understand that having it all together is not the goal. Being real is the goal. Being present is the goal. Being willing to keep growing even when it's uncomfortable. That's the goal. And by that measure, you're not failing. You're succeeding. Because you're still here, still trying, still becoming. Now let me tell you what this means, practically. Because I know you need more than philosophy. You need something you can actually do. So here it is. Stop waiting to have it all figured out before you start living. Stop putting your life on hold until you feel ready, until you feel worthy, until you feel like you've earned the right to be happy. You don't need to earn that. You already have it. You're alive. That's the only credential you need. So start living like someone who doesn't have to have it all together. Start making decisions from where you are, not where you wish you were. Start building with what you have, not waiting for what you think you need. And most importantly, stop comparing your chapter 15 to someone else's chapter 30. You don't know what their chapters 1 through 29 look like. You don't know what they went through to get there. All you see is where they are now. And you're using that to judge where you are. But that's not fair. Not to them. And definitely not to you. Here's the other thing. You're not supposed to know everything by now. You're not supposed to have all the answers. You're not supposed to have reached some mythical state of total certainty and confidence, because life is not a test you pass and then you're done. Life is a process, a journey, a continuous unfolding. And the moment you think you figured it all out, the moment you stop being confused and questioning and uncertain, that's not wisdom. That's stagnation. Real wisdom knows it doesn't know. Real growth happens in the uncertainty. Real strength comes from continuing anyway. Even when you're not sure, even when you're scared, even when you feel like everyone else has something you're missing. They don't. They're just better at pretending. Or they've stopped growing, and you haven't. You're still in it. Still living it. Still becoming. And that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Now, if this is landing, if you're feeling that recognition, that relief, that maybe you're not as behind as you thought, I want you to do something. Go to the comments and type 5 words. I'm exactly where I am. That's it. No explanation. No story. Just those 5 words, because when you declare it, publicly. When you name it, you're not just acknowledging where you are. You're accepting it. You're releasing the shame. You're giving yourself permission to stop running from your own life and start living it. And if you know someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s who's beating themselves up for not having it together yet, share this with them. Ask them to write it too. I'm exactly where I am. Because sometimes we need permission to stop pretending, to stop performing, to just be where we are and trust that it's enough. Subscribe if you want to stay connected to this work. And if supporting through Super Thanks feels right, it directly fuels more content like this. But real talk, the fact that you're here, watching, listening, I don't take that for granted. Thank you. The truth is, you've been measuring yourself against a standard that doesn't exist. You've been racing toward a finish line that keeps moving. You've been trying to become someone you already are, but can't see yet because you're too busy looking at who you're not. But here's what I need you to hear. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're not running out of time. You're being shaped by a current you can't see, but that's been moving you your entire life. Every detour was direction. Every delay was preparation. Every moment you thought you were lost, you were exactly where you needed to be to learn what you needed to learn to become who you're becoming. And who you're becoming is someone who doesn't need to have it all figured out to be worthy. Who doesn't need to arrive to be valuable. Who can exist in the mess and the uncertainty and the chaos and still know deep down that they're exactly where they're supposed to be. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And real is always better than pretend. So stop pretending you should be further along. Stop pretending you're behind. And start living from exactly where you are. Because that's the only place you've ever been able to live from anyway. And it's more than enough. You're more than enough. Right here. Right now. Exactly as you are. The current is still moving. The river is still flowing. And you're exactly where you need to be. Trust that. Live that. And watch how everything changes when you finally stop fighting and start flowing.